All right. Hey, thanks for tuning in to a special episode on Mountaintop Media. We're here with Mike Gallagher, District 5 Supervisor candidate, and I guess 7 years on the Anderson City Council. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming here. And so what motivated you to run for this position?
Well, first, I'll have 2 terms in on Anderson City Council, and I think that's probably enough to serve and making room for somebody else. And so in that process of deciding not to do that, I am called to run one more time for the supervisor seat. I've said it many times. If I thought it was going well, I wouldn't do that. I would absolutely be their biggest champion and probably help. We've served our community for more than 11 years and counting. We've always been kind of just served, whether that was in church or wherever. We found ourselves serving, my wife and I. So yeah. And so I think it's time. And I didn't feel like waiting 4 more years was right for Mike Gallagher either. So it's kind of a culmination of reasons. And so here we find ourselves in the middle of a race. So
awesome. Yeah. So we got 3 candidates in there now. And well, I should have started out with this, but why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? How long have you lived here, your upbringing, and
Sure.
what your core beliefs are, and just kind of, I like to get to know who people are other than just policy type stuff.
Yeah. No, that's great. And born in Corning, California, raised in Los Molinos, learned how to work really hard in my dad's restaurant at 15 years old, and came to Shasta County in 1986. And for just a brief stint, went to Chico for work for about a year, but I've been in Shasta County for 40 years of my life since then.
What kind of restaurant was it?
It was a mom and pop, 3 breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So, after schools, I would make pizzas for, however many we needed to make, wash dishes, bus tables, it was, So, and when you work for family, oh my God,
no 15-minute breaks.
No, that was not the case. Not until everybody was gone out of the restaurant. Yeah, we didn't just walk out, for breaks. That's how we were raised. So, so then at 24, went to trade school in Arizona for 6 months, became an HVAC tech, and spent 13 and a half years doing that, give or take a month or two.
So are you Gallagher's Heating and Air, or is that another Gallagher?
That's my older brother, Tim.
That's your older brother.
Yeah,
okay.
Everybody knows my brother.
Okay.
He's the famous one, as I say, and I'm running for office. So, but yeah, really proud of what he was able to accomplish out of right there in Los Molinos as well. Large. So saw that modeled as well. But after 13 years of HVAC, I had an opportunity to be in business for myself. I had a metal roofing company that was just a great opportunity for me at that point. And so we did that till 2008 hit, and that kind of, because metal roofs are very expensive compared to a composition roof. So that kind of tapered off, and but great experience, really thankful for that season. And then in 13, we moved to Anderson, and in 2014, Baron Browning got elected, and because of the work we were doing, we had a ministry in the Bruce Street neighborhood. So most people know about the Bruce Street neighborhood at that time.
I do.
It was generating about 80% of all the police calls for service for the city of Anderson Police Department. So we'd actually held a breakfast and asked the police chief at the time, Del Webb, where does it hurt most in your city? Because we were learning transformational principles. And so he said, well, there's 4 square blocks that are generating all these police calls. And we said, okay. So we started showing up. And then a yellow house came for sale on a corner. My wife had sold her company. So we were able to purchase that, and we created a community center.
And this is on Bruce Street, or?
It's on Mantor, but that's one street off of Bruce.
Okay.
So it's right on the corner of the 4 square blocks that were generating all the calls.
I was a really wild kid, and I know Bruce Street. I was running around there when I was, late mid 90s to early 2000s and stuff.
Yeah, so we started that in we purchased in 2011, July of 2011. So, and you're in kind of the gnarly days. There were some really, it had calmed down some. I know that the police department had, there was some gang activity in the neighborhood, but it was pretty rough when we got there. But many had gone before us, and many came alongside of us. We were just very blessed to be able to create a space in the neighborhood where people could come and serve, and people could come and be served.
Yeah, that's awesome.
After a couple of years, the neighbors, they were skittish at first, rightly so. They were pretty rough life. If you end up in the Bruce Street neighborhood living there, there's a reason. And so we just showed up 4 days a week and just wanted to know people, and then started teaching classes, and we collaborated with the county. We didn't ever take county money, but we did collaborate, giving them a place where they could come and provide services or teach classes that, so there was a place right in the neighborhood for them to come and do the services that they would provide. And so it worked out well. We saw that neighborhood transformed. I was telling a group the other night, somebody had said, you should invest in property down here, because when this turns around, their property values are going to go up. And we didn't. That was not why we were there. But I think there was a set of fourplexes, four fourplexes that at the time we got there, I think they were selling for about $425,000. They sold for over $1 million, after 10 years and seeing, the drug dealers leave and that house be remodeled, and then a nice family move in. And we just watched that over time. And transformation takes time, but we showed up for almost right about a decade. And yeah, we saw great transformation in Anderson. So, we give, the Lord is the one who called us, and he provided, and it was really just a really neat thing to be a part of, and just lots of lives touched, lots of volunteers that came alongside us and helped. And so that was really amazing. Now that all tapered off after a while, after a decade, and we were able to sell that to a wonderful family who still carries that heart for their neighbors and want to continue to do good. So we feel good about that, and very honored to have gotten that opportunity. So, but the work we were doing, so back to experience, our city manager at the time saw what we were doing in the tough neighborhood there, and had asked Baron Browning, hey, you should go meet Mike Gallagher and see, maybe he'd serve on the planning commission. So in 2014, I was appointed to the planning commission, did that for 4 years. And then Norma Comnick got very ill early on she had won a campaign, but then within a month or two got pretty sick and couldn't fulfill her role. Long story short, they appointed me to the council, and I was there about a year and a half, had to run a campaign. Although we ran unopposed that year, nobody was throwing their hat in the ring. We did that for 2 more years, so that fulfilled her term. And then I ran a campaign, won that campaign, and I'm in that term now. And we'll finish that up at the end of the year. So if that covers the bases on kind of the experience. But
so I guess they do have term limits and...
No, I could have ran again. No, I could have ran again. I just wasn't led to. I didn't feel like a third term. I think I would have done well. My character, my integrity would have not let me just like slough off in the third term. But I think it's time to let somebody else serve in that capacity. And now's the time. I'm 61 and change. I don't want to be 66 and change and running for a supervisor seat. For me personally, I think at that point, want to be doing something else possibly. So yeah, we'll see. But that's 4 years away too. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Right. It's hard to have a crystal ball with some of that stuff.
I'm finding out later in life that somebody else is in control of my life, not me. If I'm willing to be obedient, it's about obedience. So yeah.
I agree with that.
At the end of the day, that's what I'm trying to do is be obedient. So, yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned if you were happy with, we don't have to get into slinging mud or anything, but you were saying if you were happy with the way things are going, you would embrace that. So it seems like you're maybe not happy with the way things are going right now, and you are wanting to step up and feel like you could do some different things, or
100%. It starts in the board chambers. What's going on at the board chambers is unacceptable. We don't do things like that in Anderson. We can have great tough conversations, but what's happening with cutting the speaking time down and talking down to community members, whether you agree with them or not. It's just unacceptable. And unfortunately, I would tell you, and I think as I've traveled from Happy Valley to Shingletown to Cottonwood, folks notice, and the whole state knows. Like, it's not a secret anymore that Shasta County politics is a mess. And so, the first thing to start with is, fix it in the board chambers. It doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to agree with people. You just don't. But a little respect, a little peace, a conversation, some interaction, not to agree, but maybe to gain some understanding. And I think that's where it starts, because it appears to me that that's now trickled down, that attitude and that way of dealing with folks is trickling down throughout, our political, not just our political environment, but through the county workers. And I will work tirelessly to change that atmosphere in those board chambers, because that's where it starts. Everything rises and falls on leadership. If you've read anything with John Maxwell's name on it, everything rises and falls on leadership. Well, if your leadership can't hold back their tongue from talking down to somebody that's just passionate about their point of view, then you're not leading. So I think I think it has to change there, and that's ground zero for me. So,
yeah. I mean, personally, this is all about you, but I'm not your average person, but I don't really care. I have thick skin, and I don't really care what anybody thinks. I really just care about the way people vote, myself. And obviously with staff and everything, you have to have a relationship where you can actually get things done. And I understand all that, but I really care about policy and how people vote. Like, that's my, I look 100%. At that stuff. That's the most important thing to me. Is there anything, policy-wise that you would be different on, other than wanting everybody to get along a little bit better?
Sure. I think you can have both. I think you can run a good meeting. We've done it in Anderson, and we've seen amazing things over the last 10 years or so, or maybe 15, we didn't have to be that. We didn't do it that way. So I know you can have both. You can have great policy. You can have great decisions. You can choose well. You can make really hard decisions and still not be caustic. And it's a caustic environment, and it doesn't need to be that way. So, and by the way, when electeds get elected, they're elected to make really hard decisions, and they failed to do that on Tuesday. So that's the reality of it.
What was it on Tuesday?
Well, on the special meeting that to censure Clint Curtis, right? There was evidence. There was an investigation with substantiated evidence, and not that it would have changed much in the board or at the ROV, but they decided to not make a decision, which is not what you're elected for.
Then what do you think the proper decision should have been?
Well, I think the evidence showed, and I think Mr. Curtis's behavior in the chambers when he was trying to defend himself proved that he doesn't have the ability to manage people, right? He might be great at as a tech guy or a lawyer, but he's obviously not managing people that well, or we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have multiple investigations, right?
I would say that sometimes people could definitely deal with situations much better, but sometimes when you do the right thing, it creates a stir of events and things to happen. So sometimes going against the grain, but I'll agree with you that people could definitely handle themselves, a lot different in the way they deliver their messages and stuff like that.
Well, good management.
But sometimes you stir things up when you are, have the correct policies and do the right thing.
Of course. Because it's been such a caustic environment, for so long that of course we're all stirred up. But great managers and great leaders put water on fires, not gasoline. So his actions that you can go to the tape on and watch how the language he used while we were in a meeting. I was in the room. I heard it all. Stood there for the whole thing. So there's there's ways to get stuff done, and there's ways to bring people along, and there's ways to, and we're not the military, by the way.
So were you, or how do you feel about the previous, Tom Toller was there for a little while, but going back before that to, Kathy and Joanna and stuff like that, do you think they were running things properly and everything, or?
I wasn't engaged in that.
Yeah.
I was head down in Anderson, and we were doing great things, building splash pads and rebuilding band shells, and supporting our police department and doing all those things. So I really wasn't engaged in it.
Yeah.
And when I ran for office, it would have been very inappropriate for me to be engaged in it. So then when that opportunity came up, because prior to my last campaign for city council, I was looking at, hey, maybe I should be out there knocking on doors and help clean up the voter rolls. Easy peasy, right? Knock on a door. Hey, are you getting extra ballots? Not a big deal. Just go, are you finding that you're getting any extra ballots? It's just a simple thing I thought about doing. But the minute I knew I had to run a full campaign, I totally stopped and never went back. So I haven't gone for the tours. I'm not engaged. I think it would be inappropriate for somebody running for office to then put myself in that position and start making opinions about who did what, who's doing what. It's just,
for sure.
For me personally, that's just my integrity that says I'm not going there.
Yeah, well, you will, if you end up being a District 5 supervisor, you will have a great responsibility as a steering committee to, even though you can't hire and fire, but as budgetary and certain things that fall on you responsibly, on that kind of those issues.
Exactly. Got to get elected first.
Yeah.
And that's a great point. And for now, it's not I don't have a vote. Just so the public knows, I don't have a say.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any other, aside from personalities and way people carry themselves, I'd like to really get into, is there any other policy stuff that you really don't like that you think nobody's perfect and you can't please all the people all the time, but I'm sure there's some specific things that you really stand strongly against, so.
Yeah, my platform is very simple. One of my platforms is stop wasteful spending, and I think if we look at, I said it publicly, so this is not a first time saying this. I think a $40,000 contract to a friend who helped, who's in the mix for really, staff could have come up with that information with some research. Our staff, I guarantee you, staff in Anderson could have done it, and it didn't really tell us anything. The fact of the matter, it was very light on information, and we don't have $40,000 to spend like that. So that's to me, we shouldn't be doing things like that. I think when they said yes to the $1.925 million to give to a project in Anderson that was clearly not done well, and said yes anyways, in spite of the fact that they've said, oh, there's a bunch of warnings, there's a bunch of red flags.
I'm not familiar with that one. So
yeah, that was the Family Dynamics project that everybody knows about.
Okay. Okay.
So that was the project that was going to happen in Anderson, and 180 people signed a petition, and the public stood up, and I was proud to stand with them. It was sorry folks, it was a bad project from word go, and misrepresented truth, and in spite of my opponent's own admission that it was rushed and he couldn't have read the contract, and if he did, he still said yes to the money. That's not good spending, and that's one-time monies. Those opioid settlement funds are only going to come to us one time, and we better darn well do it right. We're not, and grant monies, I'll be very surprised if the state of California looks at Shasta County in the future to give us grant monies for mental health facilities. And everyone also knows, I will tell you in the gamma, everyone knows we have an issue with mental health crisis across the state. It's not just Shasta County, it's all across the state. So yeah, I think we could do way better on those things. And my answer to that is we need to have a project that's a good project. We need to know where it's going to go. That's super important. And we should set aside some of those opioid monies for matching grant funds and then wait. But those types of projects get funded when you have a good design and you know where it's going to go and you have the grant monies, the matching funds available, it's how things get done in California. It's the $140 million project to put extra lane through Anderson. That was because Caltrans was on it. They had a shovel-ready project. They had everything ready to go. And when the money came available, the state said, we're going to fund that instead of waiting 6 months for somebody to design a quick project like this particular project was, very rushed. And so I think that's super important. Because we have to do something, right? The state of California is hurting when it comes to mental health crisis, for sure.
Oh, yeah, question. You see it.
Yeah.
I mean, right
it's
here.
All over. Yeah.
I've been here since 89, and I was 12 years old. And, I mean, there was like I said, I was a wild kid. So we used to shoulder tap homeless people to buy us booze and stuff when we were kids. Yeah. And you knew them all by name because there was only like so many of them. Right. And now I don't know if it's 100-fold. I don't know, how, but it's in abundance now. So, I mean, I've seen here in Redding and Shasta County, but it's all over. You go to the cities, it doesn't matter where you go. It's definitely you go to really cold places and you don't see it
not
as much.
Yeah.
And, obviously having places that have, places like the Mission, and I'm not speaking out for or against, I'm just saying, there's definitely some places that don't have any help for people and they're less there, but they go somewhere else. There's the problem still.
Anderson
exists.
is a perfect example. We don't have services. We don't have, the population. So, and we have a group of folks who passed a 50-cent sales tax that said, we don't want that. So we're going to fund our police to help keep that to a minimum. And we have homeless in our city, but it's pretty minimal because we keep after it pretty.
How long ago was that passed?
In 14.
Okay.
2014, yeah.
That was way before your time.
Well, I would have been a planning commissioner at that time.
Oh, okay.
Somewhere in there that passed, yeah. So, and it's been very beneficial for the city of Anderson. Super proud of all the work that we've done with that,
Yeah.
So, healthy police department, crime rates are down, people feel safe, very short response times for our APD officers. So, yeah.
Yeah, Anderson seems a little bit less wild than when I was a young kid, but maybe
no,
it was
probably 100%.
Yeah.
No,
do you remember the Oaks? You're laughing. I used to live right. I don't remember the name of I used to live across the street from the Oaks.
So I got saved in 1998 at the church right next to the Oaks, Crossroads Bible Fellowship, and December of 98. And
my dad was a building official. You might know my dad at that time. Let's see. He would have been right about at the end. Michael Knight. He was the building official.
I've not met him.
And public works director of Anderson.
Okay.
The public works director retired, and then my dad said, I could do that job too.
Yeah.
And he did.
Yeah. And that's how Anderson has done it for multiple times. It's no secret. Our budget's a little tight and cash flow's a little struggle, but we're going to make it through. FEMA doesn't have the ability to repay us $650,000 on a project that they said, yeah, do it. And we did it, and they were going to reimburse. So we're a little short on cash, but we'll get through it. Times are tough for everybody. But yeah, it's a season again. When Jeff Keyser came on, it was a season when we didn't backfill a few positions, but we didn't cut any positions either. Over the years, we've taken one away to create a new position, and so that we could define the job role better, but we didn't just eliminate job positions. And so I think that's going to be an issue for the county. I think we got some stiff headwinds because of what HR1 is demanding, and we're down 127 positions. They just wiped them off the books. This current board majority, they just eliminated them, and I think that's dangerous. You don't have to fill it, but now you can't. You don't have a position there. You'd have to recreate a new position to hire somebody to do the work. And so
how do you feel about the debt to CalPERS and not living within your means? Do you think we need to raise taxes on a city, or do we need to generate more tax money? Do we need to shrink government, consolidate things, because you can't really have both,
Right. No, right. It's important to understand government's there it's not there to make a profit. It's there to produce a good product for the folks who are paying for it. And one of those items is CalPERS, because you have represented employees. That's the way it is. You don't have to like CalPERS or agree with it, but that's part of the burden. And, that is a mandate that's on the county and it's on our cities to pay, because our employees are represented. That's the fact of the matter. So figuring that out, those folks also work really hard. They oftentimes, to understand, they could probably make more money in the private sector, but they come to work for the city or the county, because there seems to be a little more security. Oftentimes they'll take a lesser pay. They have great skills. Our Anderson staff are amazing people, and I think for the jobs they do, we need to support that. And CalPERS, the bigger issue is how CalPERS is being run. Not, I can't fix that at the county or the city. That's a separate entity that needs to be. I believe they could do it much better. Yeah. There was a season when the stock market was making 21%, and they made 7 on all those folks' money. Mm-hmm. That's bad management. So that's on the employees to go to CalPERS and say, hey, you should change that and make that better. And when they do make the higher percentages on those investments, then it lessens the burden, the unfunded burden on the counties and the cities. That's just how it works, and it's all formula. But so demand more from CalPERS, 100%. Cut the employee, I don't think that's the answer. They're out there doing the heavy lifting, by the way. It's not upper management. It's not the board of supervisors. It's not the CEO or the attorney that are doing all the heavy lifting. It's the guy in the trench fixing the water line, or that guy out at the sewer plant.
I think a lot of the lower end guys are not making enough. And then I think a lot of some people that are doing some double dipping and things like that are getting paid way too much, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
But it's a tough one. How do you keep things running smoothly and keep all these positions open and not get deeper in debt? And,
right. We're going to find out in June where we're at on the budget. I know they've touted we're in the black, and we'll just see. Most every other civic entity has hit the headwinds of decreased revenues and increased cost. I'm not making excuses. PG&E went up 30% 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
And when you're spending $40,000 a month on your PG&E bill just to run your wastewater plant.
Yeah. What do you do?
You put in a solar system is what you do.
Yeah.
You put in solar panels and you try to cut that thing out. And that's not an overnight fix. That will benefit the users over time, because in time.
Yeah, the upfront cost is more, but if you can look 5 years down the road
and start seeing the cash return on that project, right? Now because all that return is going to stay in that enterprise fund. And so, we've been bashed a little bit on our mismanagement, and because we reached out to the county for a $1.5 million front on our own tax revenues. It was Anderson property tax revenues that we asked to get just about 3 or 4 months early, because our cash flow was down and we didn't want to lay people off. We got work to do. The work doesn't stop. And it was because we did about $6 million worth of projects, of which I mentioned early on, one of those being the FEMA reimbursement when they flooded the river and it washed out our walking trail. We waited 7 years for FEMA to say, yes, do it. They said, yes, do it. So we did it. It was a little over $700,000 to replace all that. We were going to get a 650-ish thousand. Don't quote me on the hard numbers, but it's in the range, reimbursement. And now we're waiting on FEMA.
Oh, yeah. At the speed of government.
At the speed of federal FEMA government. But that's life. they said yes. So we're down on that, but we rehabbed a well that was $4.3 million. Now, most of those have been, it was a spend and then get a reimbursement from Cal Water,
from the state.
Get from the state. Yeah. So they agreed with the grant money. So, but that's cash flow, right? We're putting cash out to pay the contractor, which that was a punch a new well hole for $900,000 when we found out that the old hole was bad. The casing was failing on the old pumps. So, but they want to talk about how we failed, except that what we did was there was an apartment complex right there, right across from Volante Park. Their well was failing and they wanted to connect to city water. Well, that's a win-win because we sell water. It's an enterprise district, enterprise fund, but we sell water. But that well, which has been on the books to be rehabbed, whether they were going to hook to it or not for a number of years, right? So we finally got the grant. We said, yes, this is a win-win. We're going to tie them in. We're going to rehab. And so we are just waiting on the pump to send down the hole. But we're still waiting on, it was $900,000 out of cash that we're seeing if they're going to help us with that as well. We have contingency monies that we didn't use because we were very effective in how that project went. It went really well. And we're negotiating with them to see if they'll use those contingency funds to reimburse the cost to put the new hole in the ground. So, that's government. That's how it works. You don't have to like it, but we're not failing. We're actually winning. We're seeing great things come about. And then we had a sewer line fail. It was right there by Safeway. And so you don't wait.
Yeah.
You don't go,
kick the can down the road.
Let's pass on that one. No, you don't. You fix it. And then we also repaved McMurray Drive. Now those funds were LTF funds and we had saved up our money and we were able to pay for that. But we're only a $10 million budget.
Yeah.
Half of that's for the police and the other half runs the rest of the city. So the implication that somehow Anderson leadership is failing is just unfortunate that they would go there. Of course, that wasn't the narrative.
Who's they? I'm sorry.
Chris Kellstrom and Kevin Cry.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. Okay. Over and over and over again. It's ridiculous. And so, but that wasn't the case until January 29th when Mike Gallagher decided to throw his hat in the ring. Everybody was all rosy. It was a consent calendar item. Nobody talked about it. Everybody was, yay, this is great, until Mike Gallagher decided to run for supervisor, and now we're miserably failing. And so it's just stuff like that is frustrating, but hey, that's politics. So that's the way it goes. Don't have to like it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not for everybody.
It's not for everybody. So just trying to be obedient.
Going back to the mental health stuff, I was just, because I'm real, I have different ideas in my head, and I'm not in charge. I have nothing other than just my own thoughts in my head. But I go back and forth about what the right thing and the wrong things are to do.
Yeah.
It's just such a hard, and there's no perfect system for anything.
Right.
I mean, there absolutely is. There's never going to be a system that works for everybody.
Sure.
But do you have any ideas for that to help? Maybe make this Shasta County, better as far as that situation.
Sure. Well, we're spending the money anyways, right? So we're shipping people out of county. My understanding, and I'm not the expert in the field either, so I'm more like you. It's just I'm learning as I go. No excuses. I don't have any excuses. So I hope the listeners don't go, oh, he doesn't know. We don't have to deal with the mental health crisis in Anderson because we're not the providers of services.
Yeah.
We would if we had somebody that was having an issue on the streets, the APD would take them north to where the services are. So we just didn't have that in our purview. And I'm excited to learn about it because the reality is most families know somebody that's dealing with a mental health crisis, right? At some level. So I think that, if you're going to build a facility, I think you find what will help the most people and be the least burdened on all the other resources, right? So then and keep Shasta County folks in Shasta County, I think, is real important for me as well, because right now, if we have to have somebody that needs intensive care, we're shipping them out of county. We're spending that money anyways. So if we're talking about a facility, I was able to see the plans of True North, the True North facility that was going to be somewhere up north. I know that went away. I saw how it was four separate pods, but the thing that really struck me on that particular project was if they had a special section for people that were, we call it, it's 5150, right? They're having an episode where, they're threatening suicide, or, I'm not the expert again, I'm not a doctor, but they had part of their facility was where if APD had somebody in that situation, they could take them into custody, drive to that facility, pull into a secure area, release that person into great care, professional care, not volunteer, not all this, which these were highly trained professionals ran by an organization that does this really well. Release them where they can get all the medical care they need, and that officer got to drive right back down to Anderson, be done, and continue to patrol. Which what happens now is they're stuck at the emergency room, so we're taking up an emergency bed, and that officer has to stay with them, my understanding, until the hospital releases. And then that officer has to figure out what to do with that person. And is there a bed? Is there some place to take them where we had an opportunity there that I think we might have missed out on. Now, would that facility have helped everybody? Of course not. There's a larger demographic that needs help, and so to your point, I think you were making the point. It's like I don't know how we help every single person, but what I do know is we're already sending people out of county, and that costs us a lot of money. And the True North, my understanding, would have saved us north of $1 million a year out of our HHSA budget for mental health. And so, when I look at that kind of thing, whether it was $1 million, 900,000, 1.5, I don't know the numbers, hard numbers, but the fact that we could have kept Shasta County people in Shasta County, saved money, had the facility right here where they're close to family, I think we missed an opportunity there. And I'm sure some would say that about family dynamics, but the difference was you had a lockdown facility with professionals and you had an unlocked facility with a bunch of volunteers. That was by their own applications. So,
yeah, and I think one of the difficult things is a lot of people are not from Shasta County, that come here, and I don't know. I'm not for or against the project. I don't know if something. Yeah. I just don't know. How do you take care? How do you differentiate? I mean, do you help everybody who shows up to Shasta County and it just becomes a save everybody thing? Or, you know what I mean? How do you go about, because it's not just, there's the homeless problem here is there's people from all over the place, and I said multiple times, we can't help everybody. It's not going to be the case. And I don't know if you have, I'm not the expert in the field. Yeah. So one of the things that I've, said before and will continue to say is I want to learn from the pros. I want to learn from the people who are right in the midst of it. When it comes to homeless, you have a few folks that go into the camps. I don't go into the camps. It's not my wheelhouse. But guess what? I want to learn from Dr. Thompson. I want to learn from people like Paul Abbott. What are the real needs out there? Because I'm not in it. They are in it. They've been in it. They know, and they have the compassion, the heart for that. I want to listen to those folks. I want to listen to Jonathan Anderson, who's trying to help people and keep them sheltered and fed. And what are the barriers there? And it's not my wheelhouse. I want to learn from them so that I can support them well. When it comes to mental health, I want to learn from those who are dealing with that. Yeah. The experts in that field, and it starts with police officers are the first ones. They're involved, and then it's the jail. What are you seeing when those people come into jail? What are you experiencing? And then it's whether it's catch and release or they're shipped out of county or they have to deal with the DA or probation or whatever. So I want to learn collaboratively from all those experts. Where have we been? Where are we at? And where do they think we should go? Because they're going to actually be doing the work.
And I'm not saying that's not happening. I don't want to accuse, but I think more conversation could be had with those folks. And so, and then the practitioners that are not in government, the folks who are out there doing private, what are the private folks doing? What are their success rates? How are they seeing things work? And what are they doing? Maybe we could blend that and get a little more success on moving the needle. To your point, I mean, if they're coming from all over the state, that's a tough nut to crack, because if you help 3 and you're getting 6 more, we're going backwards, folks. So, and I don't have an answer for that. I don't know what the answer is. You hear, they're busing them in. Well, I haven't seen a bus unload people, but I've heard rumors. It's like, well, if that's happening, if you can corroborate that with evidence, then let's figure out how to stop that, right? Because don't send us your people. We can't deal with them. And now they're just in the camps, right? They're on the long side of the river. They're doing, and there's a great guy, Dave Droscher, he mostly works with out of the jail system. I believe he's in Utah. But he made this statement. He said, compassion is doing something for somebody that they can't do for themselves. And so when he sees somebody, they have programs set up. So when somebody comes in on a drug charge and they're intoxicated, he says they hold them until they get clean, till they dry out. Mm-hmm. Because that person can't make a decision for themselves when they're strung out on heroin or any other opioid or, methamphetamine or whatever you want to call it, right? When they're in that place. Mm-hmm. So compassion is holding them long enough to get them dried out, so then they can choose. And then you say, okay, you have a choice. If you have a jail bed, you can either choose, and we'll lock you up because you broke the law, or you could go into this program where we want to help you get better. And they have seen just myriads of men and women get healed and healthy, and they have business. They got a moving company. They've got these businesses set up. So you don't just sit in a room like we're going to put you to work. We're going to teach you a skill. And then they have amazing, and I'm just struggling for the name of their program. Anyways, they have just wraparound services. So, and then it's peer driven as well. So when they meet at night, it's like they hold each other accountable to how they operated during the day. And it's beautiful. And they're seeing people get healed, right? So it's I think there's methods out there and modalities that work. And maybe we can begin to bring some of that to Shasta County if we're not doing it now.
Yeah. So
anyways, that was a long answer.
That's okay. I like long answers. So how do people find you? Yeah. How do they join your campaign or donate, and your handles and all that kind of stuff?
It's real simple. Just votegallagher.com. You can go there and learn all about me. You can read about what I'm trying to stand for, and what I want to see happen. Domestic violence is something we didn't touch on, but every time I hear that term, something in me churns and I'm not okay, And so is it the greatest problem we have? I don't know if it's the biggest problem we have, but it is a serious problem in our county. We're higher than the state average, and that's something that I want to see change. I just, because it draws down on every resource, starting again, like so many of our issues with the police. So but votegallagher.com. Go there. Awesome.
Do you have any closing statements? We're pretty much out of time. And if you have any, closing statements you want to make or anything?
No, just go check it out. That's a great place. So reach out. You can reach out on our team at Vote Gallagher, and I'll get back to you. Give me a minute. It's been a pretty busy season. We're coming into a little bit slower moment, so we've been pretty hard out the campaign, but we'll be getting back. If folks want to dialogue a little more. Be happy to chat with folks. And thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, for coming on.
Appreciate you. Yeah, thanks so much. All right.